This review is going to have some mild spoilers for the Breaking Point story mode in F1 2021. We'll try to avoid anything major as much as possible, but this is your heads up. Codemasters F1 2021 is host to a lot of new features not found in the previous game, but easily the most talked about is the new Breaking Point narrative story mode. It's the feature that Codemasters has championed the most. So, this review is going to focus solely on Breaking Point. Breaking Point follows 6 characters over the span of the 2020 and 2021 Formula 1 seasons. You start off as Aiden Jackson, a young driver with impressive talent who won the F2 championship and is starting his journey in Formula 1. His teammate is Casper "Cass" Ackerman, a veteran F1 driver whose best days might be behind him. The main antagonist is Devin Butler, who fans will remember from F1 2019. There's also Brian Doyle, who's the main liaison between the drivers and the team principal. He provides moral support to Aiden when he isn't feeling his best, but will also give him a kick in the bum if he thinks he deserves it.
You've got a lot to prove this year, boy, and you're swanning around like butter wouldn't melt.
Zoe Ackerman is Casper's wife, confidant, and mother to their young daughter Lily. She plays a similar role with Cass that Brian does with Aiden, though Aiden's mother and Casper's daughter Lily are never seen on screen. Instead, all of their interactions with the other characters are done through phone calls between races.
Okay?
Thanks, Mum. Yeah, I'm good. Real good. I think I delivered today.
I thought so. And I think the neighbors probably did too. I couldn't stop shouting.
Oh, not again.
Players can choose from 5 teams to play as in the story: AlphaTauri, Alfa Romeo, Haas, Williams, or Racing Point, which transitions into Aston Martin in the 2021 season. We chose Racing Point / Aston Martin to see if the transition would add any drama to the story. Breaking Point is a linear story that has players jumping in at certain points throughout the course of the year. In the standard mode that we played in, we definitely did not hit every race in the season. Furthermore, you won't be doing a full race at each stop. Sometimes you'll come in when there's only a few laps left, and other times it will be a bit longer. It all depends on the objective for that particular race as it ties into the story. For example, one objective might be to get to the pits safely after suffering a tire puncture. Another example might be catching up to the safety car during a caution. Though most of the time, the objective is about finishing ahead of certain drivers to keep your team in the running for the Constructors' Championship. Throughout the journey, tension begins to rise between the characters. In Aiden's case, he's dealing with external pressure by trying to live up to the hype as a new young hotshot driver. In Casper's case, he's dealing with internal pressure as he's trying to prove to himself that he ain't too old for this. And then there's Devin, who has his own plans to make things harder on everyone. And let us just say that this guy is magnificent at being a total jerk. Most of the story plays out in cutscenes, which were created by a visual effects house that Codemasters tapped just for this mode, and it shows, as the character models and emotions on the faces look very realistic compared to anything we've seen in previous Codemasters F1 games. Part of the story also unfolds during gameplay on track through radio transmissions between the characters. Those transitions were somewhat jarring, with suddenly going from the hyper-focus required to drive to suddenly being switched to a cutscene. However, this does not happen too often, and anytime that there's a transition from a cutscene back to the track, the player is given a bit of time to get ready for it while some last-second dialogue comes through on the radio. Further elements of the story happen between races in phone calls, emails, and even on social media. By the way, there may or may not be a few familiar faces in the social media feed if you follow the F1 hashtag on Twitter. Breaking Point is a compelling story told in a unique way, and it's certainly appreciated, especially considering that a narrative at this level has never been attempted in an F1 game before. Beyond that, the portrayals were top-notch. Even though the story was somewhat predictable, it was still gripping enough to hold our interest. We were invested and we wanted to know where things would go. Though that leads to our first problem with Breaking Point. The meat of the story all happens in cutscenes between races. So when we were actually racing, it just felt like something of a chore to do to get to the next cutscene. That feeling was exacerbated by the fact that objectives during the races are mostly just about finishing ahead of other drivers, not really anything that unique. It is a race after all. Additionally, the way the AI drives in Breaking Point is kind of terrible. For some reason, they were all a great deal slower than us, and they were more like hazards to try to drive around than other competitors that we were actually racing against. The other downside is the fact that Breaking Point is a linear story. That means once you complete your given objective in a race, anything you do beyond that has no bearing on the story at all. It effectively doesn't matter. Not even if you finish in first place when the objective was to finish in 5th or 6th. This makes the racing segments in between cutscenes seem even more like filler. At a certain point, it even undermines the story itself. One of the main conflicts of Breaking Point is ensuring that your team finishes ahead of Devon Butler's team in the constructor points. Because the AI was so easy, we were regularly finishing ahead of Devon in every race. Yet in the cutscenes, this dude would continue to talk trash as if he were dominating us all season. We suppose in the races that took place off camera, Devon's team would get the upper hand, but since we never see that happen, it kind of took us out of the story a little bit. We think that this is just a pitfall that can happen when trying to weave a linear story with a sport in which just about anything can happen. Still, we can't fault Codemasters for their ambition here. For a first attempt, Breaking Point earned high marks. Shortcomings aside, it's certainly worth playing through before diving into everything else that F1 2021 has to offer. It's our hope that in the next game, Codemasters changes the storytelling of Breaking Point to a branching narrative and combines it with the My Team mode, so that there's more weight placed on the player's performance and decisions behind the scenes. We know that sounds like a very tall order, but considering Codemasters' past record, we think it's something that they can certainly pull off. Now that you know what we think, we want to know what you think. How do you like the idea of a dramatic narrative story in a Formula One game? Let us know in the comments below, or find us on Twitter @MotorWorldHype. If you enjoyed this video, please click the like button and subscribe if you want to see more. Also, make sure to click the notification bell so you know right away when new videos go live. Thanks for watching.